My fingers trace dust on spines, each one a fossilized whisper. The monastery library, windows frame only bruised twilight. A perpetual dusk that bleeds no color into the blinding white of the stone floor. The air stings, sharp and cold, biting deeper than any 1940s autumn chill. Each breath rasps like ice chips in my throat. I catalog a weathered ledger detailing 17th century alchemy. The ink blurred into smudges by a persistent buzzing that resonates within my bones, vibrating my molars with a low, insistent thrum. Like a tuning fork struck against stone, the sound echoes inside my skull, not outside. The silence here is wrong. Too still for the wind, usual sigh. Too absolute for a place holding centuries of secrets. Only the buzzing and the distant oscillating resonance of the monastery itself, a deep, metallic groan from the stones beneath my feet. I pull a heavy volume on celestial navigation from the shelf. Dust motes dance in the weak, white light, each one a tiny sun. As I open it, a hidden slip of vellum falls whispering to the floor. I bend, the cold air now feeling like a physical weight against my skin, pressing inward. The vellum bears cramped script. The truth lies in the reflection. My pulse hammers against my ribs, a frantic counterpoint to the bone, deep buzz. I pocket the vellum, the rough edge of the paper scraping my palm. The buzzing intensifies, a sudden sharp vibration in my jawbone, making my teeth ache. I glance up, needing to confirm the silence, to find the source of the wrongness. From a high shelf, a silent figure observes. A cat, one eye, amber like old whiskey, the other pale blue like frozen lake water. It doesn't move, doesn't blink, a statue carved from shadow and stillness. Its gaze fixes on me, unwavering. The air around it seems to shimmer faintly, distorting the blinding white light. The buzzing in my jaw sharpens, becoming a needle, point pressure. It is watching me catalog the ledger, I think, the thought cold and sharp. It is watching me find the vellum, the cat. Her stillness is absolute, yet its presence presses against my skin, a silent accusation. The historical weight of the monastery, the 1940s detective fiction atmosphere of worn leather and forgotten clues, feels suddenly fragile, like the thin paper of the vellum in my pocket. The buzzing is no longer just in my bones, it's in my teeth, a high-pitched whine vibrating up my jaw, making the world feel thin, stretched taut. I feel a strange cold detachment, as if I am observing myself from a distance, cataloging the wrongness of my own perception. The memories are false, a whisper seems to form in the buzzing, not in my ears, but in the marrow. When your perceptions are wrong. The cat's heterochromatic eyes lock onto mine, the amber eye holding a flicker of something predatory, the pale blue eye utterly devoid of warmth. The buzzing intensifies, resonating directly in my jaw, a physical pressure that makes my vision blur at the edges, the blinding white of the library floor suddenly searing, the harsh shadows stretching like grasping fingers. The cat's gaze is the only thing that remains sharp, focused, predatory. The buzzing fills my skull, a sound that is both inside and outside, and the cat's eyes are the only anchor in the storm of wrongness. The mirror hangs crooked over the reading desk, its silvered surface dulled by centuries of neglect, the edges warped like a half-remembered dream. I trace my fingers along its frame-cold metal pitted with age, the tarnish eating into the silver like rust. The library's white light bleeds through the cracks, fracturing into jagged shards that claw at my vision. I lean closer, the air thick with the scent of old parchment, and something else, something acrid, like burnt sugar or the faint metallic tang of blood. My breath fogs the glass, obscuring the reflection for a heartbeat before it clears, revealing only the skeletal outline of the shelves, the empty space behind me. A reflection should show more than this. The thought claws at the back of my skull, sharp and insistent. I exhale slowly, the condensation trailing down the glass in uneven rivulets, and the reflection sharpens. My face, gaunt, eyes hollowed by the library's cold. The buzzing in my bones shifts, vibrating my sternum now, a low, resonant hum that thrums in time with the pulse in my temples. I press a finger to my wrist, feeling the rapid beat beneath the skin, the way it thrums in sync with the mirror's silent vibration. Foo perfect. The word slithers into my mind, uninvited, and I blink, rubbing my eyes. When I look again, the reflection flickers, my face distorts, the skin stretching too tight over the bones, the mouth splitting into a smile that isn't mine. Too wide, too knowing. The lips part further, revealing teeth too sharp, too white. And for a second, the reflection grins back at me, a slow, predatory smile that doesn't belong. I recoil, the back of my knuckles brushing the desk. The wood groans beneath the pressure, the grain dark and uneven, the surface slick with something damp. My skin is unnaturally pale where I touch it, the veins beneath the surface too visible, too blue, like threads of ice beneath translucent skin. The buzzing intensifies, a needle prick of pressure behind my eyes, and I squeeze them shut. When I open them again, the reflection is normal. Just Frederick Fitzwilliam, just another man in a library, just another archivist, cataloging the dead. But the memory of the smile lingers, a phantom ache in my jaw. The way it stretched too far, the way it tweety knew. Something I don't. Fuvi. The reflection remembers what the mind forgets. A high-fidelity in the hollow of my skull, a line from some forgotten text, some half-remembered warning. The cat is there, perched on the edge of the desk, its heterochromatic eyes fixed on the mirror. The amber eye reflects the predator's smile, the pale blue one, the empty library. It doesn't move, doesn't breathe, just watches. The air around it shimmers, the blinding white light bending like heat off asphalt, distorting the edges of its form. The buzzing in my sternum deepens, syncing with the slow, rhythmic creak of the monastery's stones, the distant, oscillating groan of something vast and unseen. I swallow, the motion too deliberate, and the reflection in the mirror shifts again. My face flickers, the smile widening, the teeth sharpening into points. I reach up, my fingers trembling, and press my palm to my cheek. The skin is cold, too cold, the surface smooth and unbroken. But the reflection ripples, the smile stretching further, the mouth splitting into a grin that doesn't end. The teeth glinting like broken glass in the harsh light. The cat's gaze doesn't waver. The amber eye holds a flicker of something predatory, the pale blue one utterly devoid of warmth. The buzzing fills my chest now, a sound like rowing oars through viscous fluid, thick and slow, dragging me under. The mirror's surface ripples, the reflection warping, and I touch my face again. This time my fingers press into something soft, something funrong. The smile widens, the teeth parting, and the reflection grins back at me. A slow, knowing smile that isn't mine. The buzzing drowns out everything else, the world narrowing to the mirror, to the cat, to the way the reflection's eyes lock onto mine, dark and hungry. I can't look away. I don't want to. The locket felt wrong in my hand, cold silver, heavier than it should be. It lay nestled within the brittle pages of a book on plague records, a morbid bookmark marking the final entry on cutaneous necrosis. The paper crumbled under my touch, the ink bleeding into the fibers like a fresh wound. I'd been cataloging the monastery's holdings, a task both tedious and strangely comforting in its predictability. Now, this. The silver was polished to a deceptive sheen, obscuring the age beneath. I fumbled with the clasp, the mechanism stiff with disuse, a faint tiff-a-click echoing in the vast silence of the library. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a beetle. Not a drawing, not a carving, but a perfectly preserved insect, its chitinous shell gleaming with an unnatural luminescence, a sickly, pulsing light like a trapped ember. The moment my fingers brushed the glass, a wave crashed over me. Not a physical wave, but a torrent of sensation, a visceral revulsion so profound it stole the air from my lungs. I recoiled, the locket clattering against the desk, the sound amplified in the oppressive quiet. The scent of decay, sharp and cloying, filled my nostrils, a putrid sweetness that clung to the back of my throat. It wasn't the musty odor of old books. This was something else, something rotting. A memory surfaced. Not mine, I realized with a jolt of disorientation, but the memory of Avantage, the beetle's final struggle, the suffocating darkness, the desperate scrabble for purchase, the slow, inevitable suffocation. A wave of panic constricted my chest, a primal terror that had nothing to do with my own existence. I squeezed my eyes shut, the buzzing in my sternum intensifying, a low, resonant hum that threatened to shatter my teeth. It wasn't just a buzz anymore, it was a vibration, a tremor that ran through my bones, resonating with the image of the beetle's trapped form. The rowing oars sound began then, not from outside, but from footing within. A slow, deliberate scraping, as if something were being dragged through a viscous fluid inside my skull. The sensation was sickening, disorienting, and utterly terrifying. I staggered back, my hand instinctively reaching for my head, as if I could physically grasp the source of the sound. The cat watched, its amber eye reflecting the pulsing light of the locket, the pale blue one vacant and unreadable. This isn't right, Freddy, I thought, the words forming in my mind with a clarity that felt alien. This isn't a memory. It's an imprint, Freddy, the realization struck me with the force of a physical blow. The beetle's suffering wasn't a random intrusion. It was a key to something else. But the memory of it was my own. My skin prickled with a cold sweat, the hairs on my arms standing on end. The white light of the library seemed to press down on me, suffocating, the shadows deepening into pools of impenetrable darkness. I looked down at the locket again, drawn to it against my will. The beetle pulsed, the light growing stronger, illuminating the library in a sickly green glow. The buzzing intensified, morphing into a frantic, erratic vibration, mimicking the frantic beat of insect wings. The rowing oars' sound grew louder, more insistent, a relentless pressure inside my head. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were observing myself from a distance, watching a man unravel before my eyes. Then I saw it, a subtle shift within the preserved form. The beetle's segmented body seemed to elongate. The chitinous shell warped, the shape subtly changing. The pulsing light intensified, casting grotesque shadows across the desk. I gasped, stumbling backward, knocking over a stack of parchment. The sound of the falling paper was swallowed by the oppressive silence. The rowing oars sound now a deafening roar inside my head. The beetle's preserved form resolved into something else entirely. The segmented body elongated, the chitinous shell softened, the shape morphing into something disturbingly familiar. The pulsing light illuminated a single, elongated finger, encased in glass, a human finger, pointing directly at my own neck. The first face came in the dark of my own eyelids, small, gaunt, the eyes black pits of drowning. "You forgot the water." Her voice was a whisper, not mine, yet it slithered into my skull like a needle threading silk. My fingers twitched, the journal trembling against the desk. The inkwell's cap was loose, the nib dragging through the page, the ink spreading like a slow, wet stain. Not a word yet, but the image burned itself into the parchment's grain, her face pressed against my own. Her fingers, no twin my fingers, clutching at empty air. The paper smelled of iron, of old blood, of something half-remembered. The buzzing started in my teeth first, a high-pitched whine that vibrated up my spine, making the bones hum. The sound wasn't outside me. It was footing, incipient, a needle drilling through the marrow. My hand shook, the pen scratching furrows into the page, the ink bleeding in jagged veins. "You left her to drown, Sown." The words formed in my mind, but they weren't mine. The journal's edges curled with the heat of my breath, the paper warping like flesh under a flame. I pressed my palm to the desk, the wood slick with sweat, the grain rough against my skin. The library's white light pressed down, blinding, the shadows slashing across the walls in jagged cuts, like a blade dragged across bone. The reflection in the locket's glass shifted. The beetle was gone, replaced by Fudin Main, but not entirely. The face in the glass wore her features now. The hollows of her cheeks stretched too wide. Her lips parted in a silent scream. My breath hitched. The glass was warm, unnaturally so, the heat radiating outward like a brand. I recoiled, but the locket clung to my palm, the metal biting into the skin. The buzzing intensified, a shrill keening that split my skull open. The journal's pages fluttered, the ink dripping in thick, slow drops, pooling on the desk like tears. "Who your memory is a lie." The voice wasn't in my head, it was in the air, a whisper slithering between the shelves. The cat sat now, its heterochromatic eyes fixed on me, the amber one gleaming, the pale blue one empty, unblinking. It didn't move, but the weight of its gaze pressed down like a physical force. The reflection in the locket wavered, the child's face flickering like a candle flame. The buzzing became a roar, a storm inside my skull, the shadows twisting into shapes, hands reaching, grasping. The glass of the locket fogged, then cleared. My reflection stared back, but the child's face was superimposed over my own. Her black eyes locked onto mine. She blinked, a slow, deliberate wink. Then the heat. A searing pain at the base of my neck, like a brand pressed to my skin. I gasped, the journal falling from my hands, the pages scattering like dead leaves. The cat didn't move. The reflection didn't smile. The buzzing didn't stop. The heat spread, a slow, creeping burn, the skin tightening, the flesh warping. I reached up, my fingers trembling, the tips pressing against the unnatural warmth. The locket was still in my palm, the glass cold, the reflection's child face watching. Waiting, the buzzing became a scream, a sound that wasn't mine, yet filled the library, echoed in the bones of the walls. The shadows stretched, elongated, the white light blinding, the darkness swallowing. And then, her voice, clear and cold, like a blade dragged across my throat. "The suffering was yours alone to bear." The buzzing in my bones had settled into a dull, insistent ache, like a nail driven deep into the marrow. But it wasn't the buzzing that unraveled me. It was the footy silencer. Between the words, the voice had stopped, and the absence of it was worse. My fingers hovered over the ledger, the parchment rough under my touch, the edges frayed with age. The ink smelled of copper, of old regret. I flipped the page, the spine cracking like dry bone. No entry, no mention of the girl, no record of drowning. Just blank parchment, the quill strokes erased as if they'd never been there. My breath hitched. The air tasted of ash, of something burned out long ago. The white light pressed down like a weight, the shadows on the shelves stretching into jagged fingers, clawing at the edges of my vision. I blinked, and the shapes of I moved did, twisting into something almost human, hands reaching, grasping. The cat sat on the ledger, its heterochromatic eyes fixed on me, the amber one gleaming, the pale blue one empty, unblinking. It didn't blink, just watched. The ledger trembled under its weight, the pages fluttering like dead leaves. My pulse hammered in my throat. Did I see her, or is this just dust in my eyes? I reached for the journal again, the one with the ink-stained pages, the one that had screamed her name. The desk was cold, the wood slick with sweat. My fingers found the ledger instead, the entry smooth, unbroken. No child, no drowning. Just numbers, just dates. Just I feel nothing. The voice slithered back in, a whisper against my skull, Finn, you catalogued the wrong record. The words coiled around my thoughts, tight and suffocating. I pressed my palm to the desk, the grain rough against my skin, the ledger's edges curled with the heat of my breath, the paper warping like flesh under a flame. I stumbled back, the chair scraping against the floor, the sound like nails on a chalkboard. The cat didn't move. The shadows didn't retreat. The white light didn't dim. The ledger lay open, the blank page staring up at me like an accusation. I reached for it, my fingers trembling, the tips pressing against the parchment. The ink was cold, the edges sharp. The voice hissed, "Twin, you caused the drowning." The words slithered into my mind, twisting, tangling. I recoiled. The ledger falling from my hands, the pages scattering like dead leaves. The cat's tail flicked. A slow, deliberate movement, the humming started in the walls. A low, oscillating resonance, like the distant sound of oars cutting through thick water. I turned, my breath shallow, the air thick with the scent of iron. The bookshelf groaned, the wood creaking under pressure. The shadows stretched, elongated. The white light blinding. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the false paneling. The wood was cold, the grain rough under my touch. The humming grew louder, the resonance vibrating through my bones. I pressed my palm against the shelf, the wood giving way with a soft twint click. The alcove yawned open, the darkness inside a void. My breath hitched. The device lay there, shaped like a key, humming with the same resonance. The metal was cold, the edges sharp. I reached for it, my fingers trembling, the tips pressing against the humming surface. The cat's tail flicked again, the reflection of my own hand flickering on the device's surface. The humming synced with my heartbeat, the resonance vibrating through my skull. The voice slithered back in, a whisper against my skin. "You are the one who drowned her." Hawe. The words coiled around my thoughts, tight and suffocating. The device pulsed in my hand, the humming growing louder, the resonance vibrating through my bones. The cat's eyes gleamed, the amber one gleaming, the pale blue one empty, unblinking. The shadows stretched, elongated, the white light blinding. And then, her voice clear and cold, like a blade dragged across my throat. "Futha, truth is in the device." Fufi, the humming grew louder, the resonance vibrating through my skull. The cat's tail flicked, the reflection of my own hand flickering on the device's surface. The truth was in the device, and the device was humming, and the humming was my heartbeat, and the shadows were stretching, and the white light was blinding, and the voice was slithering, and the cat was watching, and the truth was in the device, and the device was humming, and the humming was my heartbeat, and the shadows were stretching, and the white light was blinding, and the voice was slithering, and the cat was watching, and the truth was in the device. The sores arrived like a slow, creeping rot, first as a warmth, then as a throb, then as the skin splitting open along my forearms. I watched them bloom through the distorted lens of the white light, the flesh parting like petals, the edges glistening with a sickly green ichor. Suppurating ting. The words stuck in my throat, thick as the fluid oozing from the wounds. I catalogued them. Right wrist just above the pulse, the skin puckered and raw, the edges curling like burned parchment. The air smelled of copper and spoiled honey, the scent clinging to my sleeves as I flexed my fingers, the tendons taut beneath the weeping sores. The whispers slithered in, a chorus of voices hissing my name, each syllable dragging like a blade across my eardrums. Frederick, Frederick, Frederick. I pressed my palm to the desk, the wood grain rough against the wetness of my skin. The ledger lay open before me, the blank pages mocking, the inkless quill waiting. The cat had taken its place on the device, its heterochromatic eyes reflecting the source like twin moons, one amber, one pale blue, empty. The humming had stopped, replaced by the whispers. The voices coiled around my thoughts, tightening, suffocating. You drowned her. Feng Yu let them rot. Feng Yu are the plague. You are the plague. The words pulsed in time with the saws, each throb a fresh accusation. I clenched my fists, the nails digging into the flesh, the pain grounding me real, the true. The cat's tail flicked, a slow, deliberate movement, the tip brushing against the device's surface. The metal glowed faintly, the resonance vibrating through the air, through my bones, through the saws. I reached for the device. The moment my fingers brushed the humming surface, the world fractured. The bridge collapsed beneath me. The timbers groaning like dying men, the water below black and viscous, the surface rippling with the weight of unseen things. The child's face floated in the current, her lips blue, her eyes wide and unblinking. The whispers became a single voice, deep and resonant, the sound of oars cutting through thick water. I am the water. The words slithered into my mind, twisting, tangling. I reached for her, my fingers breaking the surface, the cold seeping into my bones. The water closed around her, the current pulling her under, her screams dissolving into the dark. The voice hissed, "Tamdiu are the one who failed." The bridge groaned, the timbers splintering, the world tilting, the sky twisting into a void. The sores on my wrists burned, the green fluid bubbling, the flesh parting further, the edges raw and bleeding. I gasped, my fingers still pressed to the device, the humming vibrating through my skull. The vision dissolved, the bridge replaced by the library, the white light blinding, the whispers returning. The cat's eyes gleamed, the amber one gleaming, the pale blue one empty. The sores pulsed, the green fluid oozing faster, the flesh parting wider, the edges curling like the petals of some grotesque flower. I pressed my palm to my wrist, the skin slick with ichor, the sores throbbing in time with the whispers. The device hummed, the resonance vibrating through my bones, through the sores, through the empty blue eye of the cat. The truth was in the device, and the device was humming, and the humming was my heartbeat, and the sores were splitting, and the flesh was parting, and the beetle was crawling out from beneath my skin. The cat's gaze locks onto mine, and the world narrows to the amber and the void. The air thickens, a slow syrup of pressure, and I realize it's not just watching, it's transmitting. The words slither in before I can stop them. Fee, the burden is yours. The syllables press against my skull, vibrating through the marrow of my bones, the hum of the device still thrumming beneath my skin like a second heartbeat. My fingers twitch. The sores on my wrists pulse in time with the voice, the green ichor welling, thick as oil. The suffering is your reflection, I swallow. The taste of copper lingers, the cat turns, its tail flicking once, deliberate, the tip brushing the edge of the ledger before it moves. The movement is fluid, predatory, no hesitation, no doubt. It glides toward the far wall, where the white light bleeds through the high window, a blade of blinding radiance. The blue eye gleams, not with reflection, but with something deeper, something twined alive. A low, resonant hum emanates from it, a vibration that doesn't just enter my ears but my 30 teeth, my 30 lungs, the hollows behind my ribs. The cat's heterochromatic gaze narrows, and the world tilts. I follow. The floorboards groan beneath my feet, the sound like a man whispering his own name in his sleep. The white light intensifies as I approach the window, the edges of my vision bleaching out, the shadows sharpening into jagged teeth. The cat pauses at the threshold of a narrow doorway half hidden by the curtain of light. It looks back, and the hum swells, a physical force pressing against my sternum. My breath hitches. The sores throb. I step forward. The hidden chamber is a wound in the library's flesh. The air here is stale, thick with the scent of dried herbs and something older, something trim-preserved. The walls are lined with niches, each cradling a locket, their surfaces tarnished silver, the hinges rusted open. Inside, insects. Dozens of them, preserved in amber, their legs pinned, their wings spread like fragile stained glass. But they're not just insects, they're people. The carapace of a child's face, the segmented abdomen of a man's torso, the delicate antennae of a woman's fingers. The details shift when I look too long. The child's mouth curves into a scream. The man's eyes flicker open. The woman's fingers twitch. The humming grows louder, a low, oscillating resonance that vibrates through the floor, through the stone beneath my feet. The cat pads deeper into the chamber, its claws clicking against the flagstones, the sound like a metronome counting down. The blue eye glows brighter, casting a sickly light over the lockets. The air shimmers, and for a moment I see Fufi Mu, the mirror, image, the predatory smile, the eyes too dark, too knowing. He grins, and the reflection isn't in the glass, isn't in the water, it's in the 40 air itself, a ripple of distortion hanging in the chamber, like a ghost. The cat stops at the far wall, where a stone archway frames another window. This one not of glass, but of some dark, veined marble. The reflection pools there, the smile widening, the teeth too sharp, too many. The humming becomes a pressure, a weight, and I stagger forward, my boots slipping on something wet. The sores on my wrists split further, the ichor dripping onto the flagstones, hissing like acid on stone. I reach the archway. The reflection in the stone grins wider. The cat's gaze burns into mine, and the words slither in again. You are the one who failed. The humming swells and the lockets tremble in their niches, the insects shifting, their forms writhing like living things. The mirror, image's smile stretches too wide, too deep, the edges of his mouth splitting, revealing something black and glistening beneath. The cat's reflection in the stone arches its back, the blue eye glowing, the amber one empty. The chamber tilts, and then the cat's tail flicks, and the reflection in the stone flinks. The tightening began in my extremities, a slow retraction as if my skin were being drawn taut over bone. I am becoming enlightened. Fafetu I wrote in the ledger, the charcoal scratching against the parchment, a frantic counterpoint to the growing stillness within. The white light, once a searing blade, now felt warm, a comforting heat that seeped into my marrow, easing the ache in my joints, the tremor in my hands, the sores on my wrists, those festering monuments to what seemed to recede, the green ichor drying into a brittle crust. The air shimmered, a heat haze rising from the flagstones. The discordant harmony of whispers and screams which had become a constant companion seemed to coalesce, to sigh-resolve into something almost melodic. A choir of suffering somehow transformed into a hymn. It pressed against my eardrums, a physical sensation, yet it didn't grate. It soothed, I felt. Lighter, the burden, the suffocating weight of responsibility, seemed to be lifting, dissolving into the warm light. My reflection in a shard of broken glass dentif, a remnant of some forgotten accident, caught my eye. It was different. The lines around my mouth, the furrows of worry that had etched themselves into my face, were smoothing out. The shadows beneath my eyes were fading. I looked younger. Purified fight, I thought, and the word tasted like honey on my tongue. But then the smile, a fleeting distortion, a predatory curve that wasn't my own. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, but the image lingered, a phantom imprint on my retina. The cat remained motionless, a silent sentinel in the chamber of preserved horrors. The amber eye, usually a pool of inscrutable darkness, now reflected the descending shadow of the mirror, antagonist, a faint, distorted image superimposed upon the amber. The blue eye, however, remained fixed on me, a cold, unwavering gaze that seemed to penetrate my very being. Rowing oars through viscous fluid foof, that was the sound now, a subtle rhythmic pulse that resonated deep within my skull, a feeling of being drawn, not upwards, but elsewhere. I reached out, tracing the contours of my face in the glass. The skin felt tight, almost brittle, like parchment stretched over a frame. The luminous sheen was undeniable, a pearlescent glow that emanated from beneath the surface. The suffering is ending, vowed the charcoal, leaving a faint, shimmering trail on the page. The insects in the lockets seemed to stir, their preserved forms twitching subtly, as if responding to some unseen signal. The hum intensified, a low, oscillating resonance that vibrated through the floor, through the stone beneath my feet. Another glimpse in the glass. The smile again. Wider this time, more pronounced. It wasn't just a distortion, it was a fa presence, a subtle overlay of another face superimposed upon my own. Rows of tiny insectile teeth gleamed in the reflected light, a silent predatory grin that sent a tremor through my core. The rowing sound intensified, a relentless hypnotic rhythm that seemed to pull me towards something unseen. I am ascending, Wasind, I wrote, the words feeling hollow almost, programmed. The cat's tail flicked once, a slow, deliberate movement that seemed to mock my pronouncements. I felt a strange detachment, as if I were observing myself from a distance, watching a puppet perform a predetermined dance. The air grew thick, heavy with the scent of dried herbs and something else, something metallic like old blood. My hand trembled as I lifted the ledger, the weight of it feeling strangely insignificant. The luminous sheen on my skin pulsed, a faint, rhythmic glow that synchronized with the rowing sound. The whispers and screams coalesced into a single sustained note, a resonant hum that vibrated through my bones. I looked in the glass one last time, the smile. It consumed my reflection entirely, obliterating my own features, leaving only the predatory grin and the glint of insectile teeth. The luminous sheen fractured. Not shattered, not broken, but fractured. Like ice on a thawing pond, a network of hairline cracks spiderwebbing across my skin. Beneath the pearlescent glow, something else pulsed, something rotten. A sickening, familiar stench rose from my forearm, a miasma of decay that clung to the back of my throat. I raised my hand, the movement stiff, unnatural. The cracks widened, revealing glimpses of something festering beneath suppurating sores, weeping with a viscous, green fluid. The ichor, once a brittle crust, now flowed freely, slick and nauseating. I am the suffering gun. The thought bloomed in my mind, not as a realization, but as a statement, a declaration imposed upon me. The words felt alien yet undeniably true. My hands. They were unraveling. The joints, the knuckles, the delicate architecture of bone and tendon seemed to dissolve before my eyes. A grinding sensation, like glass fracturing underfoot, resonated through my bones. Each joint released with a sickening pop, a wet, tearing sound that echoed in the oppressive silence of the library. The bone buzz intensified, a relentless, oscillating hum that threatened to shatter my skull. The color palette shifted, the blinding white of the light twisting into a sickly, swirling vortex of white and black. The shadows deepened, no longer mere absences of light, but tangible entities pressing against me, suffocating me. The air grew thick, viscous, as if I were wading through a pool of stagnant water. The rowing sound, that insidious, hypnotic pulse, warped, amplified, becoming a deafening roar that drowned out all other sensation. I looked down. My left hand, it detached, not with a clean break, but with a tearing, pulping sound, the flesh sloughing away like overripe fruit. The fall was slow, agonizingly slow, as if suspended in thick syrup. It landed with a soft thud on the flagstone floor, a grotesque parody of a severed limb. A wave of nausea washed over me, a primal revulsion that threatened to overwhelm my senses. The cat remained motionless, a silent, obsidian sentinel perched atop a disintegrating bookshelf. The shelves themselves crumbled, releasing a cascade of dust and brittle parchment. The heterochromatic eyes, once pools of inscrutable darkness, now reflected the swirling chaos, the predatory grin of the mirror antagonist, a distorted, mocking image superimposed upon the amber. A voice, cold and dispassionate, whispered within my mind. "You are the final insect in the locket." The words were not spoken aloud, but implanted directly into my consciousness, bypassing my ears entirely. They resonated with a chilling familiarity, a sense of inevitability that stole the breath from my lungs. I felt a tremor run through my core, a deep, visceral shudder of understanding. The suffering wasn't being alleviated, it was being transferred. I was the vessel, the receptacle for an endless cycle of pain. Another joint went. My right wrist, the charcoal still clinging to the bone, detached with a similar sickening sound. The bone buzz reached a crescendo, a deafening roar that threatened to split my skull. I stumbled, my legs weakening, the floor tilting beneath my feet. The library, the books, the ledger, the cat twee, everything began to spin, blurring into a chaotic swirl of white and black. My gaze fell to my palm, the one that remained connected to my arm, and there, nestled in the center, amidst the decaying flesh, was a beetle. A perfectly preserved insect, encased in amber, its tiny legs twitching, its antennae probing the air. It was identical to the insects I had catalogued, the ones I had deemed so fascinating, so necessary. I was becoming them. I was them. The culmination of a perverse, horrifying ritual. The grin in the glass widened, consuming my vision entirely, a silent, predatory mockery of my final, desperate moments. The ash grits against my tongue, a fine powder dissolving into the green fluid pooling beneath me. It's not blood, not anymore. More like the residue of something that was never alive. My skin, what remains of it, is a map of fractured white and weeping black. The bone buzz is gone, not silenced but twined day, leaving only the thick, suffocating silence of a vacuum. I feel the clarity like a shard of glass lodged behind my eyes. I am the water. I am the drowning. The words aren't mine. They're the library itself, the dust, the ledger's final ink, the mirror antagonist's smile, my own mouth stretched wide, teeth gleaming like broken porcelain fills the space where the light used to be. It's not a reflection anymore. It's the only thing left that's real. The cat hasn't moved. Not since my right hand fell. Its heterochromatic eyes, amber and black, swirling like oil in water, now hold the mirror's grin. The shadows in the library, the ones that pressed against me like wet cloth, have dissolved into the same white ash that coats my bones. The floor is a slick mosaic of my own disintegration. I try to lift my remaining hand, the one still vaguely attached, but it's heavy with the weight of the ash. My fingers twitch, sending a ripple through the green fluid. It smells like rotting lilies and old pennies, a sickly sweet decay that coats the back of my throat. The silence deepens. It's not empty. It's sootful full. Full of the absence of the rowing sound, the absence of the buzz, the absence of my own heartbeat. It presses in, a physical weight against my eardrums. The last thing I see before the white ash blurs is the cat's eyes. They don't blink. They footy shifter. The amber darkens, the black bleeds into it, and the mirror's smile widens, consuming the space between the bookshelves, the ledgers, the very air. It's my face. It's the face of the child I catalogued. The one I thought was just an insect in the locket. Not drowning, the thought surfaces, sharp and clean as a knife, smiling. The memory isn't mine. It's the child's face, small and unburdened, eyes wide with wonder as they held a beetle in a glass jar. Not a locket, not suffering, just sunlight and a smile. The cat's eyes, now fully the mirrors, blink once, a slow, deliberate motion. The ash on my skin feels like cold rain. The silence swells, thick and absolute. As the library, the monastery, the weight of the ledger, the burden of the truth. All of it dissolves into the single perfect clarity. I am the locket. And the child's smile, unburdened, unbroken, is the last thing my mind holds before the silence swallows the memory whole. The cat's eyes remain fixed, the only thing left in the world, blinking once more in the perfect empty dark.